You walk into your bank. Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Doesn't matter which one. You think you're dealing with your bank. But here's the twist. Your bank doesn't actually own itself. There's another bank. A bank you've never heard of. A bank that owns your bank. And that bank, it owns 88% of everything. 88% of every company in the S&P 500. 88% of every stock you can buy. 88% of every mutual fund, every ETF, every retirement account. Let me ask you this. What happens when one entity owns almost everything? What happens when that entity makes more money when you stay poor? By the end of this video, you're going to see the financial system completely differently. You're going to understand why you can't get ahead. Why your paycheck never goes far enough. Why the rich keep getting richer while you work harder and harder. It's not an accident. It's by design. And there's one bank at the center of it all. So, what's the name of this bank? Let me give you 3 clues. It manages $10.50 trillion in assets, more than the entire GDP of Japan. It's the largest shareholder in Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, and Exxon. And its CEO makes his money whether the economy goes up or down. Would you want to know who they are? Let's rewind. Think about the biggest companies in the world. These companies compete with each other, right? Apple versus Samsung, Google versus Microsoft, Pfizer versus Moderna. At least, that's what they want you to think. But here's what nobody tells you. They all have the same owner. Pull up the shareholder list for Apple. The number 1 shareholder, Vanguard Group. Pull up Microsoft, number 1, Vanguard. Amazon, Vanguard. Tesla, Vanguard. Morgan Chase, Vanguard. Bank of America, Vanguard. Pfizer, Vanguard. Moderna, Vanguard. Now here's the really crazy part. Vanguard doesn't just own tech companies and banks. They own the companies that make your food, the companies that provide your electricity, the companies that own your apartment building, the companies that manufacture your medicine, the media companies that tell you the news. One entity controlling almost everything you interact with. But here's the kicker, and this is where it gets really interesting. Vanguard isn't even a bank. Not technically. It's something much more powerful. Are you starting to see the problem? All right, let me break this down. Vanguard Group was founded in 1975 by a guy named John Bogle. The idea was simple. Create low-cost index funds so regular people could invest in the stock market. Noble goal, right? But here's what happened. In 1975, Vanguard managed $1.8 billion. By 2000, they managed $560 billion. By 2020, they managed $7 trillion. Today, in 2024, they manage $10.50 trillion. That's a 583,000% increase in 49 years. But here's the twist that changes everything. Vanguard isn't owned by shareholders. It's not a public company. It's owned by its funds. And who owns the funds? The investors. So technically, Vanguard is owned by millions of everyday people. Sounds democratic, right? But here's what they don't tell you. Those millions of investors, they have zero voting power. The actual decisions are made by a small group of executives. And here's the kicker. Nobody knows who those executives are. Vanguard is privately held. They don't have to disclose their leadership structure. They don't report to anyone. They control $10.5 trillion, and they operate in complete secrecy. Now, here's my question for you. When one organization controls that much money, and nobody knows who's actually running it, what do you think they're doing with that power? Now, you might be thinking, wait, I thought BlackRock was the biggest, and you'd be half right. BlackRock manages $9.5 trillion, second place. But here's where it gets really interesting. Who's the largest shareholder of BlackRock? Vanguard. Vanguard owns 8.0% of BlackRock, so the biggest investment company in the world is owned by the second biggest investment company. But wait, it gets weirder. Who's the second largest shareholder of Vanguard's funds? BlackRock. They own each other. It's a circular ownership structure, and it's completely legal. Now, let me show you how deep this goes. Together, Vanguard and BlackRock own 18% of Fox, 16% of CBS, 12% of Comcast, which owns NBC, 12% of Disney, which owns ABC, 10% of News Corp. So when you turn on the news, there's an 80% chance you're watching something that Vanguard and BlackRock own. And you know what those news channels don't talk about? Vanguard and BlackRock. When was the last time you saw a primetime news segment about how the companies own everything? Never, because they own the companies that would have to report it. Are you seeing the pattern yet? Let me get specific, because numbers don't lie. According to Bloomberg's Billionaires Index and SEC filings from 2024, here's what Vanguard and BlackRock own together. Technology, Apple. 15.9% combined ownership Microsoft, 14.8% Amazon, 11.7% Google Alphabet, 13.2% Meta Facebook, 12.8% banking, Morgan Chase, 14.3% Bank of America, 15.1% Citigroup, 13.9% Wells Fargo, 16.2% Energy, ExxonMobil, 17.3% Chevron, 15.8% BP, 11.4% Pharmaceuticals, Pfizer, 16.7%, Johnson & Johnson, 14.2% Moderna, 12.9% Food, Coca-Cola, 14.8% PepsiCo, 15.3% Nestle, 11.9%. Now watch this number. If you add up the total market value of all the companies where Vanguard and BlackRock are top 3 shareholders, it's $47 trillion. That's $47,000 billion. For comparison, The entire US GDP is $28 trillion. They control assets worth more than the entire American economy. But here's what really matters. They don't just own these companies passively. They vote on behalf of all their investors. So when there's a shareholder vote on executive pay, on mergers, on corporate policy, it's not millions of individual investors voting. It's Vanguard and BlackRock voting as a single block. And they always vote together. Always. So, here's my question. If two companies control the voting power of $47 trillion in assets, who's really running these corporations? Now let me show you something that'll blow your mind. Because this isn't just about control, it's about profit. And here's where the incentives get really dark. Vanguard and BlackRock make money from management fees. They charge between 0.03% to 0.5% annually to manage your investments. Sounds tiny, right? But here's how the math works. If they manage $10 trillion and charge an average of 0.2% in fees, that's $20 billion per year. Every year. Guaranteed. Whether the stock market goes up or down, whether you make money or lose money, they get paid. Now here's the twist. What happens when you get richer? Let's say you build up a $500,000 retirement account. You might think, great, I'm financially secure. I can retire comfortably. And what do you do when you're comfortable? You stop investing new money. You might even start withdrawing money. And when you withdraw money, what happens to Vanguard's fees? They go down. So, here's the uncomfortable truth. Vanguard and BlackRock make more money when you rate perpetually saving but never wealthy enough to stop. They want you on the treadmill forever, contributing every paycheck, but never reaching the finish line. Now let me show you how they. And sure, that happens. In 2019, something happened that nobody paid attention to. The Business Roundtable, a group of 200 CEOs from America's largest corporations, issued a statement. They said, corporations should no longer prioritize shareholders. Instead, they should serve all stakeholders. Employees, customers, communities, the environment. Sounds progressive, right? But here's what it really means. If a company doesn't have to maximize shareholder returns, then it doesn't have to maximize your returns. It can pay executives more. It can invest in ESG projects that lose money. It can prioritize social goals over profits. And who pushed for this change? Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock. He wrote a letter in 2018 saying corporations must embrace stakeholder capitalism. And you know what happened next? Every major corporation adopted it. Why? Because BlackRock and Vanguard are their largest shareholders. When they say jump, corporations ask how high. Now, here's the kicker. Since 2019, corporate profits have increased 37%, but shareholder returns have only increased 18%. Where did the other 19% go? Executive bonuses, diversity initiatives, carbon offset programs. All good things, maybe. But here's the point. Your investment returns went down so corporations could prioritize other goals. And who voted for those corporate policies? Vanguard and BlackRock, using your shares. So, they're literally voting to make you less money. Are you starting to see it? Let me take you back 117 years. Year 1907. New York City. The stock market is crashing. Banks are failing. People are panicking. The U.S. doesn't have a central bank yet. The government has no way to stop the bleeding. So, who steps in? J.P. Morgan. One man. One private banker. He locked the country's most powerful bankers in his library and said, nobody leaves until we fix this. And they did. Morgan coordinated a bailout using private money. He saved the entire financial system. He was a hero, a savior. But here's what happened next. In the aftermath, people started asking, wait, if one man has enough power to save the economy, doesn't that mean he has enough power to crash it too? And that question led to investigations. Congress discovered that J.P. Morgan and 6 other bankers controlled industries representing 80% of American economic activity. They called it the Money Trust. And in 1914, Congress broke it up. They created antitrust laws. They limited bank consolidation. They established the Federal Reserve to prevent any one person from having that much power. Now watch this. Today, in 2024, Vanguard and BlackRock control industries representing 88% of the S&P 500. That's more concentrated than the Money Trust of 1907. But this time, Congress isn't doing anything about it. Why? Because Vanguard and BlackRock aren't banks in the traditional sense. They're asset managers. So they slip through the regulatory cracks, and they've grown more powerful than J.P. Morgan ever was. Let me tell you about something that happened in 2020, and I guarantee most people have no idea this occurred. March 2020, COVID hits. The stock market crashes 30% in 3 weeks. The Federal Reserve steps in with an emergency lending program. They announce they're going to buy corporate bonds to stabilize the market. But here's the problem. The Federal Reserve doesn't know which corporate bonds to buy. They're a central bank, not an investment firm. So what do? They hire BlackRock to manage the program. BlackRock gets to decide which companies get bailout money and which don't. And here's the kicker. BlackRock is also one of the largest investors in those same companies. So they're using government money to bail out their own investments. Let that sink in. They get to decide, should we save Company A or Company B? And Company A happens to be one where BlackRock owns 12% of the shares. What do you think they chose? According to a Gao report in 2021, 87% of the bailout money went to companies where BlackRock or Vanguard were top 5 shareholders. 87%. And how much did BlackRock get paid to manage this program? They won't say. It's classified as a consulting fee, but independent analysts estimate it was between $200 million and $500 million. So they got paid hundreds of millions to bail out their own investments with your tax dollars. And nobody went to jail. Nobody even got investigated. Why? Because they're too big, too powerful, too connected. Now, let me show you how deep this goes, because it's not just about money, it's about people. Here's how the revolving door works. Brian Dees was a BlackRock executive from 2017 to 2020. Became Biden's director of the National Economic Council in 2021. He advised the president on economic policy while his former employer BlackRock managed the Fed's bailout program at Whale. At IMO, was a senior advisor at BlackRock, became Biden's deputy treasury secretary. He oversees financial regulation of the companies BlackRock invest in. Michael Pyle was BlackRock's global chief investment strategist, became chief economic advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. He shapes administration economic priorities. Wally Adimo, yes. Another one, BlackRock executive, now deputy treasury secretary. Regulates the financial industry. You see the pattern. The people who are supposed to regulate BlackRock and Vanguard used to work for BlackRock and Vanguard, and when they leave government, where do they go? Right back to BlackRock and Vanguard as highly paid consultants. So, here's my question. When the regulators used to work for the companies they're regulating, and will work for them again when they leave government, who are they really working for? Now, here's where it gets philosophical. And this is the part that should really keep you up at night. Let's say you own shares in Vanguard's S&P 500 index fund. You technically own pieces of 500 companies. But do you really own them? You can't vote on corporate decisions. Vanguard votes for you. You can't attend shareholder meetings. Vanguard represents you. You can't influence corporate policy. Vanguard decides. So in what sense do you actually own anything? You're more like a creditor than an owner. You're owed returns, but you have no control. Now, here's the twist. This creates a new kind of feudalism. In medieval times, peasants worked the land, but the lord owned the land. Today, you invest your money, but Vanguard owns the companies. You do the work. You take the risk. You save every paycheck, but they control everything. And just like medieval lords, they take their cut management fees whether you succeed or fail. You're a digital serf, and your retirement account is your plot of land. Now, let me show you how this plays out in the real world. Let's talk about housing, because this is where the Vanguard BlackRock system hits you directly. You've probably noticed, houses are unaffordable in 2024. The median home price in America is $417,000. In 2000, it was $119,000. That's a 250% increase. But your salary hasn't increased 250%, has it? So what happened? Here's what happened. BlackRock got into real estate in 2012. BlackRock launched a fund to buy single-family homes. They bought 17,000 homes in the first year. By 2024, BlackRock-affiliated funds own over 80,000 single-family homes across America. But here's the kicker. They don't buy homes to sell them. They buy homes to rent them. Why? Because rental income is recurring revenue. If they sell you a house, they make money once. If they rent you a house, they make money every month. Forever. So they're literally buying up the housing supply to ensure you can never afford to buy. You'll be a renter for life, paying them every month. Forever. And here's the really dark part. BlackRock's largest investors, pension funds and retirement accounts, including your 401k. So your retirement money is being used to buy up houses that you can't afford. You're literally funding your own exploitation. Are you seeing it now? Let me show you another way they control you. ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Sounds good, right? Corporations should be responsible. But here's how it actually works. BlackRock and Vanguard use ESG scores to decide which companies get investment. High ESG score, money flows in, stock price goes up. Low ESG score, money flows out, stock price crashes. Now here's the problem. Who decides the ESG scores? 3 companies, MSCI, Sustainalytics, Refinitiv. And who owns those companies? BlackRock and Vanguard are top shareholders in all 3. So they control the ratings agencies that score companies, the investment funds that reward or punish based on those scores, the media companies that report on ESG. It's a closed loop. They control every step of the process. Now, here's where it gets political. Oil companies, low ESG scores. Gun manufacturers, low ESG scores. Traditional banks, low ESG scores. So BlackRock and Vanguard can effectively defund entire industries they don't like without passing a single law, without a single vote, just by moving money. And here's the kicker. They're doing this with your retirement savings. You might support oil, guns, whatever, doesn't matter. Your money is being used to destroy those industries anyway, because you don't control it. They do. Let me show you where this is going. Because the consolidation isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. 2025, Vanguard and BlackRock begin buying stakes in major AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic. Majority they'll own pieces of all of them. Why does this matter? Because AI is the next revolution, and whoever controls AI controls the future economy. 2026, they expand into farmland. BlackRock already owns 300,000 acres in the US. By 2026, they'll own over 1 million acres. They won't just control where you live, they'll control what you eat. 2027, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, launch in the US. And guess who's managing the digital wallet infrastructure? BlackRock has already signed contracts with the Federal Reserve. They'll manage your digital money. 2028, You'll own nothing and be happy. That phrase from the World Economic Forum, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's the business model. You'll rent your home from BlackRock, you'll lease your car, you'll subscribe to everything, and they'll own it all. 2029, the first stakeholder score systems launch, like a credit score. But for your entire life, good ESG citizen, you get better rates, better access, bad score. You're locked out, and who manages the scores? The same companies that manage your investments. 2030, Vanguard and BlackRock merge, not officially, but functionally. Their boards will overlap completely. Their voting will be 100% coordinated. They'll be one entity controlling everything. And there will be nothing anyone can do about it, unless we act now. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but I need Vanguard. My 401k is with them. How else am I supposed to retire? And that's exactly the trap. They've made themselves indispensable. You can't retire without them. You can't invest without them, so you're stuck. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The system is designed so you never actually retire. Think about it. You invest for 40 years. You save diligently. And then what? You have $1 million in your 401k. Sounds great. But with 4% annual withdrawal, the safe rate, that's $40,000 per year. Can you live on $40,000 per year? Maybe, if nothing goes wrong. But what about healthcare? Inflation? Market crashes. So you keep working. Part-time at gig jobs. Consulting. You never actually stop. You just slow down. And the whole time, Vanguard keeps taking their fees. You're a cash cow from age 25 to age 95. That's the system, and breaking free requires something radical. So what do? First, understand what you're dealing with. This isn't capitalism. This isn't free markets. This is corporate feudalism, and you're the serf. Second, diversify out of traditional index funds. I'm not giving financial advice, but consider real assets, skills, local businesses, things they can't control with a keystroke. Third, and this is the most important, demand transparency. Vanguard operates in secret. That shouldn't be legal for a company managing $10 trillion. Contact your representatives, demand disclosure, demand antitrust enforcement, and fourth, share this information. Because the only reason they've gotten this powerful is because nobody's paying attention. They're counting on you being too busy, too tired, too distracted to notice. But now you know. One bank owns your bank, and they profit when you stay poor. So, here's my final question. Are you going to keep feeding the machine? Or are you going to starve it? The choice is yours. Thanks for watching.